All right, so we have here these are the organizers of the group. We have Dimitri, who is actually not here today. Myself, Mike Dixon with Wellington Street Consulting, Mr. David Pileggi with Staples, and David Losey. David Losey is actually no longer going to be an organizer for this group. He's actually, I know. He's apparently decided he's too good for SharePoint and is shifting career paths onto other platforms. He is still going to be very active in the tech community and is actually starting his own user group, something about digital platform experiences. Yeah, we actually had information about that on our slide from last month. Their first meet was actually yesterday. Yesterday or Tuesday? Tuesday. So, so I don't have information about their next meet, but we will miss you, David Losey. So we replaced him with another David.
It's David's world. We just let everyone else live in it.
That's right. All right. So last time we had our holiday experts panel. Good time was had by all. Anybody here view that? Did you guys see that online? Anybody know if that's been published online? I think it was.
Not sure.
Not sure. Okay. If not, we'll get into that. Okay. So anyways, yeah, you should be able to watch that online. We also have about 2 years worth of videos now on our website or on our YouTube channel. We also recently relaunched our public-facing website, and on our new public-facing website, we have an archive of all of our previous sessions. You can now find sessions by speaker. You can find sessions by sponsor, and you can also find all of the decks, both the presenter's deck and the organizer's deck. So the organizer's decks are the ones that have all of the monthly updates in them. So speaking of updates, and you'll have to excuse me, the person who built the deck is actually not here. Dimitri put the deck together, but he couldn't show up. So there's a new feature, Global Reader Experience in SharePoint Admin Center. Why is it not refreshing?
Slides through the live meeting.
Yeah.
Microsoft Speak will tell me that.
It does. Well,
Really?
it doesn't work well. We'll just say it that way. It does work, and right now, because I was a little bit absent-minded and phenomenally forgot my laptop at work because I went to autopilot mode. Yeah, we would have had it up here. It would have been nice. It would have been pretty. Yeah. So my apologies.
Right. So we'll work through this. This is, like I said, this is our first time using live events, so we're learning. Apparently we're learning PowerPoint doesn't work.
It does.
That's
but
amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Like I said, of all the things I would think to test, PowerPoint compatibility would not be one of them.
Missed it by that much.
Right. So yeah, so new global reader experience in the new SharePoint Admin Center. I have no idea what that means. Do you?
Not exactly.
Mark, do you know what this means?
The global reader experience?
Yeah, what's a global reader? Is this
So,
like an accessibility thing?
No, in a lot of organizations, the admins have access to the admin center,
Mhm.
and they don't tell anyone what's going on. Here's my sample. And so there's a new global leader capability where you can go into the admin center and you can see things which you can't change it. So for instance, you can see service company, you can see the message center.
Okay, so is this a role?
It's a role.
It's a role.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's, you know, it's for someone. It's like being a visitor at a site.
Okay.
in a
So how does that differ from the auditor's role, which has been in there for quite a while?
Oh, that's a whole different thing.
Okay.
Then you're an auditor.
Yeah.
I think there are 20 or 30 roles now.
Yeah, there's a lot.
All these different admin centers, and so people, you know, they may have access. They're trying to make them actual roles as opposed to, you know, who have access to this.
Right.
So this was. This
Okay.
Yeah, the first line says it's a rule.
Okay.
And a lot of organizations are going to find this really, really helpful because their admins don't talk.
Right. Yes. No, I'm very aware of the problem they're attempting to solve. That's definitely huge. So,
It'll take 20 seconds. Just
will it?
potentially.
All right, then I need to click it earlier. Yep. So we are also going to be getting an updated feature, email notifications for comments, app mentions in Word and PowerPoint. Oh, okay. All right, so when people give you to app mentions inside Word and PowerPoint, people will actually get email notifications. Just like they have been able to get in Teams if you have your Teams configured to get that. That's good. I think that's one of those things where everybody kind of assumed that that worked, but it didn't. So it's nice to see them change that. And a new feature for Outlook on the web, a room card. Oh, very nice. Room card can include a map as to where your conference room is. How awesome is that? That is on a delay
It's 20
because it's a live event.
20 to 40 seconds.
It's sort of a lot.
It's live. That way I can hit a censor button every time he swears.
George Carlin delay.
Yeah.
There's a good reason for it. He called it.
So, ta-da. So I think this is a great feature, sorely needed. So we can actually find our rooms. And also, the other thing that's really nice here is this is going to show us, oh no. This is going to show you all of the metadata that has been sitting in Microsoft Exchange for the past 20 years, but nobody knows exists.
Yeah.
For all of these room features, like the fact that it has an audio, or it has, you know, you can put in extensions for the phone that's sitting in there, all of that kind of stuff. The number of people.
That's pretty
like
nice.
this, they have coffee machine in there.
Ooh,
That's a new one.
that's nice. I don't drink coffee. Can you imagine?
Bean bags, though, you sit.
Bean bags are good.
They have bean
I'm
bags.
totally booking that room.
So one of the other things coming up is changes to Power Apps. So Power Apps are getting custom forms integration into SharePoint libraries. So this is a little bit of a throwback, comes back to being able to design your own pages without going into the Power Apps canvas mode.
Okay.
So it's more advanced than the previous customize this form button that was there, but not quite stepping into a canvas mode. So for anybody who used to use SharePoint Designer to create custom forms, this is much more. Those were the days. That was awesome.
I missed them.
I used to do that all the time.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions about that? Who here is using Power Apps, just by show of hands? Okay. All right. Who here would be, and I'm asking this because it's come up a couple of times, who would be interested in us doing a session on Power Apps, like an intro session on Power Apps? All right,
A
cool.
lot of nodding going on.
What's that?
A lot of nodding going on.
Yep.
It's actually
All right, cool.
starting to pick up.
I can absolutely do that. It'd be fun. So what else are we getting? We are getting a new feature for lobby dial-in control for attendees. Lobby control for dial-in attendees.
Yeah. So this is the one that Staples, let's just say, has thrown fits for our senior leadership. And that is where people who dial in would end up in the lobby nine times out of 10. There is a tenant switch that says even dial-up users can go ahead and start the meeting. We got that turned on. However, that being said, you don't always want that to be the case. And so that's where this comes in, where you're going to actually be able to, in your meeting controls, actually be able to select if they need to be in the lobby or not. It's not just going to be a tenant level anymore.
Okay. So the change here is the granularity of it. It used
Just
to be
like-
tenant-wide,
Right.
and now you can do it tenant-wide sets the default, but then you can make exceptions per meeting.
Correct.
Okay, cool. That's good. I like.
Skype for Business
For the most
actually
part,
had
we all like
that.
I was gonna say we've had this.
So that feature parity, yeah,
Still working on it.
just saying. Oh, yeah.
Oh, inversion control.
Yeah, it's version control. So
Nice. Okay.
so
All right.
So when it comes up, I'll start talking to this now if you want, unless you want to take this one. This one's fun. The long and the short of it is, with the new modern pages, and it'll probably happen when I'm talking, hopefully. So with the new modern pages, one of the things that you could not do is, the only way you could see the changes that were made between versions is actually reverting back to a different version. Or it was messy, there was other ways of doing it, not getting into it. Long story short, this will actually show you with highlights or a different color schema what was changed between the two, the last version and this version. The newest version you're actually looking at.
Keep talking about that.
Okay. So this is something that for content editors, especially if you have your internet on SharePoint, especially if you're using like a communication hub or a site hub, then that's the situation where you're going to want that the most. This kind of is one of those things that was kind of lacking, where the old classic sites were a lot easier to use, and because of the fact that was a content management server was actually absorbed in 2003. No, 2007. It was 2007. So that was a hypothetical question myself, trying to make myself think. But anyways, that's where that comes from.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dave.
Yeah.
So next new feature is per site sharing links can now default to people with existing access. So for some reason, this is one of the things that was not available to us before, but will now be available. Prior, if you hit share and then you added a person, it wouldn't check to see if that person already had access or anything. So we're still looking to clean that up. So a lot of times people are just clicking the share button because it's the easiest way to get a link out to somebody, even though that somebody already has access. Problematic. happy to see changes happen in that space.
It's behaviors. Let's face it. It's easier to share the link. I got a few nods of the head. It's easier to share a link than actually grab the URL and paste it in an email or whatever. Using the share the link is fine, but one of the things that, as you probably may or may not know, if you actually look at a document, look at who has access, you'll see on the top you'll have basically the quote unquote hard coded from the site, but then you'll have the second set of shared by link. And so what ends up happening is with all the shared by link, it starts to get messy really quick, especially when half to all of the ones that were shared were actually part of the team. So you can't, someone who is a site owner looking at that is going to be like, okay, these people should have a link. Meanwhile, if they scroll down far enough, they would go, why is John Smith in here? And that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a real interesting thing where they need to, ever since they added this feature of clicking the share allows you to actually modify the access to it. I mean, we're still suffering the ripples of that change.
Oh yeah.
And while I understand why they made that change, and yes, it's a huge benefit, it really eases that process, but it just makes a nightmare out of the security side of it. And we need to, what I'd really like them to see is to come up with a decent verbiage to define the difference between just share a link or to send a copy to this for people that already have the access, you know? And it's interesting because if you go into Word and Excel and PowerPoint, if you go into the backstage area and you click on info, there's a button there that says copy path. And that's my favorite way to do it. But you actually have to go all the way in, open the document, and then just go, it's ridiculous. So that same kind of copy path mentality, I think if they've made that louder and put it right in the SharePoint interface.
Agreed.
And made it, you know, so they're doing good. I think that's one of the last things I'd kind of like to see added to that little sharing card. The sharing card has gotten dramatically better.
Agreed.
You know, they've done a good job of like, you know, send a link versus send a copy, attach a copy. I like that verbiage. There's just this one last little piece that we're still kind of struggling with.
Switch there was a way to share it, but set the default to read instead of edit, because our intranet has had many people going in and editing documents without realizing it.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
That can be done via tenant setting, if I remember correctly. But the thing is, the entire tenant is like it's an all or nothing situation where it should be at a site collection level.
I hadn't even thought of that scenario. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. I have to run a report every morning to see if there's broken inheritance on documents.
Good times.
Awesome. Easier discoverability of broken inheritance would also be very nice. They made some steps in that direction, but
yeah,
not enough.
Agreed. Plenty of room for improvement there.
All right. Next new feature is the enhanced scheduling experience in Teams. And this kind of piggybacks off of that other feature that we were talking about. This is basically where you can go in Teams to set up the previous feature. And much like David said, it's the feature that's been in Skype for Business forever. Like back when it was called Link.
I love how the fact that for your meeting settings, it actually opens up a browser to do it there instead of Teams. That's my favorite.
And when they were first rolling that out, it would open up that browser to a 404.
Right. Yes, I remember that. That was even better. Good times.
Yeah. No, that's been a painful one. Yeah. I actually did a blog post on my site when Microsoft first announced feature parity. Basically calling it out and listing all the things, and That blog post has now become a series because they've been coming out one by one. They're checking them off. It's getting there, but it's been what, 8 months since they announced feature parity? Something like that.
Easily.
It's been a while,
Yeah,
and it's definitely not there. But this is a big part of it, right?
agreed.
Does this give us the ability to select specific presenters in Teams?
You can actually do that during the actual creation of the meeting. As long as the meeting doesn't start, you can make changes to that. That's coming as well.
Sure.
I don't know if that's been released. I gotta be careful.
Yeah, no, after the fact.
Just saying.
After the fact is fine. Well, because Skype for Business, that was locked.
Oh yeah, that was lots.
Once the meeting started, it was,
Yeah.
you can't change those.
Yep.
All right. And a huge thanks to Turn Digital. Awesome. So that's the last of our updates. This session was sponsored by Turn Digital, which basically means they bought the food and helped us coordinate all this stuff and pay for all of our social media accounts so that you all know that we're here, which is very cool. So thanks for the grub to Turn Digital. And now we're off to the main event, which is the two of us chatting some more.
Just the two of us. Oh wait,
No,
no.
not that.
Yeah, probably not a good
Not
idea to
that.
sing. Yeah, no. Okay.
No.
We'll do karaoke after this, maybe.
Karaoke, oh my God. All right, so can all of those of you watching online hear us? No, because it's still just that Surface Hub.
But that's
Yeah.
okay, because we still need that for the actual recording.
Yeah, but I'd really love for somebody to be able to actually confirm
Well,
that.
I heard Bill actually joined it.
I think they're still on the other channel. There's some people there.
Yeah, but he's on as a producer. Can you click the
The
guest,
Guest link.
the guest link, and see if you get audio through the guest link, please? And you'll need to open that in a browser that is in private mode or one of your other profiles.
And because this is actually behind and
Yeah, I was gonna say, turn that off now, please.
That's-
That's very distracting.
it is, it's like the time.
Actually, leave it open, just slide back over the void. Yeah. Because we will want to come back to it afterwards. Like I said, new. We're trying it out. It's clunky.
To say the least.
But the thing that it does that Teams didn't, and the reason that we're trying this out is this gives us the ability to choose one camera to be full view, which is something that we can't do in a regular Teams meeting. In a regular Teams meeting, you know, it works great if you're sharing a screen or if you're all focusing on a PowerPoint deck or something like that. But if you have a bunch of video feeds, you can't tell it, hey, pin this one, make this one the big one. And that's problematic.
I crashed.
Out now. On the receiving end.
Correct.
it doesn't look like that.
Right. Yeah, on the receiving end, you can do that, but that's client centric. So that doesn't come through in our recordings. So
You just have somebody record with their phone while someone's watching.
yeah, awesome. We've tried that too. That was also a nightmare. We've tried many different configurations.
I broke it.
You broke it.
I did. It's one of the issues when there's no connectivity and Skype tries to take over, and yeah, good times.
Yeah, so
Awesome. Thank you.
Does anyone need the code? Maybe not. We'll give it to them if they need it. Hi, Mike.
Hi. How's it going?
Groovy. Thanks for coming to Staples. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's amazing how it looks so much like Microsoft.
Isn't it? Why don't you give a primer about what got us here?
Sure. So,
While I look for the questions.
nice. So the whole premise around this, and Mike and I were talking about how we could do a session, is the bottom line is I'm knee deep, actually neck deep, in actually transforming Staples from using Skype for Business online to Teams only. It's been an interesting journey. I've heard multiple times from my manager, my director, vice president, that flipping burgers in Sheboygan might be my only option if this doesn't go well. I'm saying that a little bit tongue in cheek, but at the same time, it's a situation, and the whole concept of going from Skype for Business to Teams, there's a lot more moving parts than you can possibly think. And so what we were talking about is, I'm guessing, how many of you are using Skype for Business? A few of you. How many are on Teams? Another few of you. So the thing is, and I'm like, let's do a consultation, a mock consultation, and teach, all we can about the migration from Teams to from Skype for Business to Teams. I've been a little dyslexic today. Sorry about that. Long story short, and he's like, what I'm going to do is just read questions, and the answer is no. Actually, the consultant role is just as important in this mock engagement as me answering the questions, and here's the reason why. When you are in Skype for Business, for those of you who raised your hand, for those of you who have not been on Skype for Business and may go straight to Teams, or for those of you who are on Teams, a lot of times asking the right questions or being able to ask your superiors or the senior leadership team or your business the right questions is as important or maybe even more important than actually implementing Microsoft Teams. I'll tell you right now. How are you doing on getting the questions?
Keep going.
Okay, not a problem. So just to give you a heads up, and I'm going to kind of answer a couple of the early questions on Staples is right now knee deep in the migration. This started about 6 or 8 months ago, where we actually turned two very small teams to Teams only. There are a lot of issues with Teams only in a large corporation when everyone else is in islands mode. Biggest complaint was no one's getting my messages. I'm getting. Oh, what's islands mode?
What's islands?
Oh dear,
What are the different modes?
Oh Lord, hopefully I can remember. So islands mode is the one that's pretty much the default in your tenant. So if you're using Skype for Business, and unless you switched it when you first built your tenant, you are starting in islands mode. Basically, it'll allow you to run both. You can run Skype for Business, you can run Teams, but they are islands unto themselves. Neither of them actually talk to one another. There is the Skype for Business meetings mode, which means all the meeting information. So I want to hold a meeting, it's in Skype for Business. However, all my instant messaging, all of that is over in Teams. There is also another Skype for Business mode where it's Skype for Business only, meaning we're not even touching Teams, we're not releasing Teams because of their Office 365 groups. I'm being a little snarky. I apologize. Again, for those of you who know me, sarcasm is the only sense of humor I have at times. But the long and the short of it is there's all these different modes. Then you have Teams only mode, which is the reverse of Skype for Business only mode. That's where Microsoft wants to get you to. In fact, you've got less than 18 months to get there if you are using Skype for Business Online, because it doesn't exist in 18 months. So you don't have much of a choice but to switch over to that mode. When we were ready, we actually, just before Thanksgiving, before our blackout period, we decided, let's do a huge proof of concept. 2,500 people were switched over, all of our entire SDS departments, Staples Digital Services. You could translate to that, basically to our IT. Everyone in IT, That was interesting because of, guess what? We're also the ones who take the tickets. We're the ones who try to share screens. We're the ones who try to take over screens. Hi, we're using Teams only, and they're on Skype for Business, and most of them don't have Teams installed. Yeah, we created some problems for ourselves. We should probably have had a business unit test. However, that being said, we also understood the pain points behind going to Teams only in an islands only or islands mode community.
Yeah,
Did you find your question, sir?
I did. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Awesome. So we're going to do kind of a little sort of role-playing sketch here. I'm going to come in as the consultant or project manager. I could be internal for the company, and I'm going to be asking stakeholders of this project the questions. You know, the idea here is to give a demonstration of the types of questions that we should be asking, and not only that we should be asking, but how we ask them. How you ask things can be incredibly important, and we'll get into those. I'll get into that as I'm asking some specific questions. So Dave, are you currently using Skype for Business?
We are. We have 21,000 people using Skype for Business currently.
21,000. Oh boy. And is that Skype for Business on-prem or in the cloud?
In the cloud.
In the cloud. Okay. So that's one of the big things. Never make any assumptions. Okay? Never assume anything. Try to make your questions very open-ended. Okay? And also, there's some other things that I'll get into too, but one of the biggest advantages of making your questions open-ended is it gives you the opportunity to kind of assess the technical literacy level of the person that you're talking to, and you can kind of adjust your future questions based on that. I've had a few meetings that I booked for 2 hours to do an in-depth technical dive that only went a half an hour, and be like, you know what, I have what I need. I'm just going to have to go find the rest myself, because it was very clear to me that this person was not going to be able to answer my questions. So being able to do that is incredibly important. I think one of the most challenging skills as an IT person is the ability to assess someone that you're talking to's level of computer literacy. It is so incredibly important, because if you speak over them, they can get overwhelmed very quickly. But if you go the other way and you speak under them, they're going to think that you think they're an idiot, and they're going to think that you're a pompous ass, and they're not going to talk to you. So it really is a double-edged sword, and it's incredibly challenging, because you can go from one person to the next person, and they could be in the same IT department, in the same company, and wildly different skill sets. So just kind of be aware of that, and leave the option open for letting them answer, so that way you can kind of assess that and adjust your questions accordingly as you move forward. And try not to make the person feel stupid, because if you do that, then your project's going to be very difficult moving forward. So, okay, so I'm sorry, 21,000 people, and they're all in the cloud.
All in the cloud.
All in the cloud. Okay. Do you have directory synchronization in place?
Yes, we do.
For this cloud tenant? Okay. That's another big one. Don't assume they have that. This is from personal experience. I keep assuming that if they have Active Directory on-prem and they're using Office 365, of course they connected the two. Amazing. So of those 21,000 people, how many people in your organization do you think will be affected by this transition?
Well, outside of the fact all of them are going to be affected, one of the issues that we're going to have to face and deal with, and fortunately we're coming off of the backside, is we have a blackout period. We're retail, and we do not make changes from the week before Thanksgiving to last week.
Okay.
And so because of that, we were thinking about actually pulling the trigger, going teams only for the entire corporation prior to Thanksgiving, but it literally gave us a week and a half to pull the trigger. And you do not want to affect people with a change of that magnitude and then go into a blackout period and have that situation go thermonuclear.
Okay. So that's good to know. So all 21,000 people though are going to be affected?
Absolutely.
Okay.
However, that being said, we are going to do a proof of concept.
Okay.
So it'll be
Right.
staggered,
So phased. Okay.
That's correct.
Good to know. How are you guys using Skype for Business?
We're using it for
As in what parts of Skype for Business
what
are you
parts?
guys using?
Ooh, good question. So there's different parts, as everyone knows. We're using it for instant messaging. We're using it for peer-to-peer calling. We're using it for video conference calls. We are using it to hold meetings. The one thing we're not doing is we're not going to use voice over IP. We're not putting our phone systems through here. We looked at it. It was a great idea. We have two systems already. We have Cisco and Avaya. We could not get rid of one of our two systems. We were not going to go to the third system. So because of that, we end up having to pull the plug on phase 2 of Skype for Business and actually having our phone systems go through, because there was no legitimate way for us to fully take out one of the two systems we're already currently on. And because of that, we were not going to pull that trigger.
So you say that you're using it for meetings. When you say meetings, is that internal or external or both?
It's both.
Okay. So once again, this is a thing that a lot of companies, they get kind of confused by this question. Because for a lot of companies, they didn't know that it can be used externally. Like, what do you mean? So you get a lot of, like, you know, the puppy dog tilted head looks when you ask this question. So one of the other things that you can do with these interview processes is these can be educational, you know, so you can kind of pepper in, like, it's kind of a way of saying, hey, did you know we can also do this? And how about this? And how about this? And how about this? Without it coming across like you're being salesy, you know? So you can just kind of pepper those in. And I'm gonna dig even deeper on that with this next question. So let's pretend, for example, that Staples was not using it for external. Is there a third-party app that you guys use for external conferencing, like say WebEx, GoToMeeting, or anything of that nature?
So we did use WebEx,
Okay.
and that because we needed to do external meetings. And then the reason why we left WebEx is because of the money that we would save. I think it was somewhere around the tune of $5.2 million a year in savings, because a lot of people would call into a conference call early. In WebEx, as you know, it's pay per person per minute, and some people would never hang up. That was fun, and everything else in between. So because of that, that was a immediate return of investment in what allowed us to actually pull the trigger on going Skype for Business.
Yeah, so my next question was going to be, what does that bill look like? Okay, so he volunteered the information, but if he didn't volunteer that information, my very next question was going to be, what does that bill look like? And also, a lot of times you'll get different answers. Oh, our sales team uses this product, but all these other people, they use this product, but then this company, this department went completely rogue and paid for their own thing out here doing this thing. So one of the things that you can do out of this is kind of discover that information, get that all up, and start asking like, okay, what do those bills look like? And most likely the answer is going to be, I have no idea. Can you tell me who I can talk to find that out? You know? So a lot of times a single discovery meeting isn't going to be enough. One of the things you can discover is other people that you need to get in touch with. So you want to take note of that kind of information at the time. But frequently, getting rid of something like WebEx or GoToMeeting can completely finance, you know, the entire project. So this can be a really important thing to go after, especially if you're trying to do this with senior management and they're kind of, meh, we don't know if this is worth it. You know, this is a great way to uncover all the hidden costs that can be taken care of. Because there's not only the cost, like David gave some great examples of how those costs can go crazy. But in addition to that, just getting everyone on a single platform, I think people really underestimate how much extra administration goes through, like, oh, can I get your WebEx account? I don't have a WebEx account. Can we share it? I have set up WebEx accounts as resources in Exchange so people could check them in and out and schedule who was using them at which times, because they have, you know, 2 or 3 named seats in their conference system. So it's a really cool thing to do with your Exchange server, by the way, is to kind of use it to share named seats for things. But if it's web conferencing, we want to try to move away from that. So, all right. So next question. This is a tricky one for Staples, but this is on my standard list of questions that I would ask anybody. What is your internet access like at each of your offices?
Seriously?
Your how many thousands of locations?
Yeah, so I can sum it up in groups. We have 4 main branches. We got one here in Framingham. We've got one in Westminster, one in Aurora, Colorado, and one in Seattle. Those have extremely large pipes, not overly concerned with bandwidth. However, that being said, we have a lot of smaller locations, especially stores. Some of our stores are using DSL, or I would swear is throwing like 56K baud modems, dial up. They're not, but it feels that way.
Feels it. Yeah.
And that was one of our toughest things to deal with. And fortunately, at the time we released Skype for Business, the stores, so the retail side of our business was already looking into finding pipelines to get a larger pipe into these stores, especially the ones that have shared workspaces. And that's starting to, it's called Workbar, I believe, and it's becoming more and more popular. Because of that popularity, you have more people in. What's that?
They just went bankrupt.
Did they? Yeah. Awesome. Good to know. I learned all kinds of things here, even about my own company, apparently.
Yep.
Good times. But anyways, that being said, we still have those locations. We'll probably end up having them for ourselves, and we're still going to have to deal with the same growth points and pain as well.
Okay. So, and I apologize, I asked these a little bit out of question. Back to the meetings that you guys hold regularly.
Okay.
How frequently do you guys do video over those meetings? Mm-hmm. Like, is it standard practice within your company to have each participant of a meeting turn on their camera?
It depends on their manager usually. So,
okay.
So there are certain managers I know absolutely demand/require a video to be shown, especially if you're working off campus. That is a standardization for many of the managers in SDS for certain. However, it is not required across the boards. That being said, with our room systems, those all have video going unless they're like literally stopped manually.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking this question is basically to kind of get more information around bandwidth utilization. Okay. One of the things that happens a lot, especially in Skype for Business and Teams-based projects, is people end up walking away from it saying, it sucks, the audio quality is piss poor, the video is terrible, connections keep dropping, and it has nothing to do with the product, it has everything to do with the caliber of the network. Okay, so I'm asking for kind of two reasons. A, I want to find out if they're used to doing video streaming over their network. I might do a follow-up question of what do you think of the quality of that to see if they're currently saying, yeah, we get a lot of reports of dropped and crappy video, or if everything's hunky-dory. And then B, to get an idea of what an increase might be. You know, is this going to be a huge increase to what they're used to or not? So my then follow-up question is there a bandwidth increase in the budget for this project for each of these sites? So for those sites that you mentioned, now you mentioned 4 headquarters that have really good pipes, that's great. For these smaller sites that are going to be participating in some of these conference calls, we may need to, in order to ensure the success of this project, we definitely want to look at bandwidth and probably increase the bandwidth as a part of this project.
So the answer is yes, we are definitely going to do that, especially for the stores, for multiple reasons. That being said, you haven't asked this question, but I'm going to kind of phase into what we dealt with. When we released Skype for Business, it was extremely rapid. And when I mean extremely rapid, as in less than 6 months, from proof of concept all the way to full implementation. We were kind of under the gun because we wanted to use Skype for Business and not renew a contract with WebEx.
Contract is expiring.
The old contract is expiring. Basically, the seat of our pants was on fire. Have a nice day. That being said, there were a lot of mistakes, and because of those mistakes, how should I say this nicely? The way that Skype for Business was viewed, especially by the senior leadership team, was less than favorable for a long time, to the point where Sandy went to, with our entire senior leadership team. Sandy is our CEO. My apologies. So the CEO of Staples and his entire leadership team trekked over to Redmond, sat in front of Sadia at Microsoft, and says, "Fix it." That's how bad it was. Needless to say, we had an emergency team. Microsoft had an emergency team, and there's a third party as well that was brought in to understand what was going on. One of the biggest things that we found was everything was going over TCP instead of UDP. And the reason why is when we put in the laundry list of ports to have open for numerous IP addresses, they just did the one on the top and skipped every other one. If you don't understand what I just said, long story short, there was only one pipe in and out, and it was basically port 443, which is TCP, which uses siren technology. It's outdated. That's so 1990s, if you will.
Well, it's not just outdated, it's not what that protocol is for.
Exactly.
You know?
And so what ended up
use the
happening
right
is
tool.
people were dropping off their calls constantly. The call quality dashboard was lit up with pores everywhere. There was a lot of issues. Our QoS was set up. However, even with the QoS set up, it was not enough to handle the fact that it was going through 443 only. So there's a lot of different things that we had to combat when we went from Skype for Business to Teams, and the reason why we've taken longer. Even though Teams and Teams and Skype for Business are using the same ports, which makes it nice, it took the emergency remediation that we had to go through in order to make it a reality. And despite all that, now the senior leadership team is already a little bitter under the collar, if you will. A good example is we had a situation where Skype was perceived to have an issue. Oddly enough, the meeting never was scheduled for a Skype for Business meeting, so so it was a user error, but you don't exactly tell senior leadership, oh, your admin probably forgot to the Skype for, push the Skype for Business button. It doesn't work that way. And you're also working at a negative visual standpoint as well. And so because of that, there's been a lot more care in making sure that this change from Skype for Business to Teams, because there is no step further. It's not like we can go from Skype to Business to Teams to Tribes or whatever, wherever they're going to name the next product. But you get where I'm coming from.
+1 to renaming Teams to Tribes. I like it. I'm up for renaming it to anything but Teams. It's an absolute nightmare. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Very thorough answer. All right. So the next question, we're kind of shifting tracks here a little bit. Do you currently have an internal employee training program? And if you could go back, answer this when you first started.
Yeah.
From that time frame.
Wow. Okay.
And then tell the nice folks about all the wonderful things that you've implemented since then, because you've done some wonderful things at Staples.
So for a while, until Skype for Business was implemented, I was a one-man army. All of Office 365 products across the board, I owned them except for Exchange and for Power BI. There was no training. There was no way to train at that time at Staples. There was the idea of training, and they brought me in for the purpose of coming up with ideas as well as user adoption. So one of the things that we did do for the first year that I was there, about a year and a half actually, we had Brainstorm. We implemented Brainstorm, had a link from our SharePoint environment to go over to Brainstorm, which was decent, and it helped lighten the load for what I had to do as far as continue the user adoption. 2 years ago, I was basically running around, and that's why my hair looks like that, to the point where I was absolutely frantic because of the fact I was constantly taking every single person who wanted to ask me a question. I would set up a meeting. My calendar was absolutely obnoxious. It was downright poor planning on my part. So 2 years ago, I started the Office 365 Assistance Time Block. Basically, it's 2 office hours, started on Skype for Business, and as of this year, I've switched it over to Teams. And it was a first come, first serve. You come, you ask your question, and what ended up happening is people would come, they would ask a question, and they would leave, and as you would expect. But then something changed. All of a sudden, I got office hour groupies. And they stayed on and they started listening to other people's questions. And I actually encouraged that. I'm like, hey, if you want to hear other people's questions and permanently borrow their ideas, why don't you do that? And so people started to take that. And then over time, it became a community. It's gone to the point where we actually have hatched in the last 3 months a championship, a champions community, where now there are champions out there helping us spread the word about Teams. We've trained them. We've had Microsoft come in, and all of a sudden, what ended up happening is what was once a one-man army now is a whole mess of people. We have people actually asking to become a champion. What do I need to do to become a champion? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you can actually have tags or medals next to your image in an Office 365, and they want that champion attached to them.
Always add banana stickers.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. That's super cool. I love that. I love the idea of having an internal user group essentially inside your company. It's a fantastic idea. I also like that because one of the other things that I try to work to promote is just company culture. And that helps really kind of create a very solid company culture and give people, something new to look forward to at work.
And we're all over the map, literally, on multiple, both location and department. Some of my heaviest users are not part of SDS. Some of them are from learning and development.
SDS.
Staples Digital Services is our IT department, so that's SDS. I apologize. I think they just spill alphabet soup and come up with a new acronym every so often.
Okay. So one of the reasons I ask this question, I want to make sure that the idea of education in some form is integral into the project planning. We want to do this from day one. A lot of people ask me, what are the key components for getting adoption? And the problem is they ask you that question because they're like, yeah, we just finished this project and now nobody's using it. And I'm like, well, you need to redo the project and start your adoption from day one. Adoption needs to be thought about at the very beginning. You want to think about education. You want to educate on the way through. You want to run focus groups. You want to get feedback from the people that are using it and ask them, what are you currently using? What do you love about what you're currently using? What do you hate about it? Whenever I'm transferring people away from any platform to something new, those are my two favorite questions to ask. What do you love about the current program? What do you hate about the current program? I want to make sure that I can fix the thing that they hate about it. I want to make sure I don't lose the thing that they love about it, or I'm screwed. If the product that I'm moving them to doesn't have their favorite thing, I've got a problem. So these are really good questions to ask people.
There's 3 stages of adoption. Should I? Yeah. Okay. You got your early adopters. You've got your adopters at a regular interval, and then you've got the millstones, basically the ones you have to drag along. And we have all 3. I think this might be a question, but I'm going to just go ahead and jump into it. Teams has been the best shadow IT ever as far as viral level. We have not released it full time yet. When we first started the proof of concept, over 8,000 people out of the 21,000 people were already using it. When we had SDS, our IT department, go into the proof of concept, it's been steadily increasing, and we're now kicking around 17,000 people have manually installed it on their own before we even were able to push it out. And mind you, we suppressed Office 365 tool so that hey, you got Teams installed on your computer now. That we actually suppressed that by group policy, because we didn't want this thing to go without the training, which is what Mike was talking about. But because of the fact that SDS was constantly sending out requests or instant messages through Teams, and they were on Skype for Business, they get the email saying, hey, someone's trying to reach out to you in Teams. We couldn't really squelch that, could we? And because, sorry, but so what ended up happening is this thing has become viral. And so literally, as far as turning it on for people, we have less than 1/4 left to actually have to worry about undoing the install as far as the group policy. So it installs automatically through Microsoft Office 365. which was released in April, but we're on the semi-annual. So we actually got that back in November, and that's when all panic started happening. Because it's like, we can't have them see Teams right away, and that's where the group policy came into effect.
Awesome. So we covered this a little bit, but one of my standard questions for asking here is, are you currently using Skype for Business for calling? And if so, is it integrated into your PBX system?
So for us, the answer was no. And just to reiterate, we could not get rid of a system completely in order to be able to bring on a new system. And it just did not make financial sense or the sanity of our IT department to bring a whole new system in.
Have you looked into whether your existing PBXs are voice over IP compatible?
They are. We're using Cisco phone system, all voice over IP. All the pieces are in place, but it's just, unfortunately, there's certain pieces of our Cisco system that just could not be replicated in what's available currently with the phone systems through Skype for Business or Teams.
Okay. Are the systems that can't be replicated, how widely utilized are they?
So Avaya is all our call centers. Avaya is a call center system. There's no.
So it's using hot groups and the like? Call queues?
Oh yeah, call queues, the whole 9 yards. And it would take a sheer miracle for our call centers to even think of changing systems, considering how much time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears has been dedicated into fine-tuning the Avaya product to the place where it is. It's our call centers are our lifeblood. That goes down, we're toast. So because of that, you don't fix what's not broken, especially in that industry.
So the reason that I'm digging into these sorts of questions is to try to get an idea of scope. Because a lot of times companies will say things like, oh, we have this legacy thing that, you know, is absolutely crucial to our business. And then you do some digging and you find out that it's like, you know, Ralph in billing is the only person that uses this legacy system, but we're going to hold it back from the 27,000 employees of Staples because of Ralph in billing. So maybe we can find, you know, we'll spend some effort and find a way for Ralph to find some other way. But likewise, you can do things where, okay, maybe we would consider, let's leave the Avaya system in place and put a Skype for Business Enterprise Gateway on-prem at Staples, because that way, with a Skype for Business Enterprise Gateway, you can keep your PBX on-prem, but then port those calls into Skype for Business online, and have the two communicate with each other. So maybe your smaller offices all have all of that, but your big data centers still utilize an on-prem PBX, and we could get those two to talk. Because yes, Skype, Microsoft's PBX is cool, but it's the calling queues are very lightweight. There's a lot of missing features there if you're looking for the advanced stuff. It's actually something that Wellington Street Consulting uses. Yeah. Even with our very small company, I have found features that are lacking that have frustrated me. But again, they're getting there, and maybe 6 months from now that won't be true. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
Microsoft, if you're listening, we need the ability to push a voicemail to an unnamed mailbox.
Just saying.
Come on. It's not hard. Give us a group mailbox for voicemails.
All voicemail.
Yeah, that'd be cool too. No, but like, for example, I have the phone number on my website. You know, I would really like that to go to a voicemail box that is answered by the same mailbox as the email address that's also on there. That's info at. Every company has an info at shared mailbox somewhere. Maybe it's a distribution list, maybe it's a shared mailbox. Right now with Microsoft, you can't point it to a shared mailbox. You can't have any combination of numbers go to a shared mailbox. It can only go to a licensed individual, which means it's a single point of failure. You can't set anything up where multiple people could access it. You know, it's a really weird thing for them to kind of pick at, but that is currently how it's configured. Very sad. We covered that one. I'm just going through our questions because we've jumped around a little bit. What is your federation currently set to?
Yeah.
This is a really important, please note the way that I ask this question. I'm asking, what is your federation set to? Very specifically an open-ended question, very specifically not laying it out so it can be like originally I would ask people, do you have open federation? They'd be like, that sounds good. I'll say yes. And then I don't know if you actually understood my question or not. If I say, what is your federation set to? And they say open or closed or something else that's technical, if it's technical and it's correct, be like, okay, this person knows. If they say red, I'll be like, okay, and I'll just write down, they said red, and I'll look into it myself and figure it out.
Federation. You gotta be careful because with Teams, it also ties into SharePoint as well, so that you get two different layers of federation as well. So for sharing,
yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
Sharing externally, we have a whitelist domain for sharing through OneDrive and Teams SharePoint. For multiple reasons. One, for protection to ourselves, and we have certain governances in place to make sure that we do protect ourselves and the data that's in our tenant. However, there's a second level of federation, which is what we're referring to, seeing we're talking Skype for Business and Teams. In this case, Staples, because we deal with so many different companies, so many different clients, so many vendors, so many partners, etc., we have open federation, meaning if you have Skype for Business, whether on-prem or in the cloud, and you're willing to federate with us if yours is closed, we will be able to talk with you. You have to be careful what you do, because as soon as you turn on and say, I am allowing this domain, you automatically went from open to closed federation, meaning every single company that you want to do business with has to be whitelisted in that list and saying if this domain is allowed. We had a Microsoft, oddly enough, Gold partner do that to us, and all of a sudden my phone rang off the hook constantly going, I can't talk to my husband. I can't talk.
I did not do
no,
that.
I
did not do that to Staples.
No,
so you know.
No, it was not you. And literally within a matter of minutes, the fact that Open Federation was no longer there, it was DEFCON 1 for a few minutes until I figured out what happened. I'm like, guys, why did you do that? And they're like, oh, it's still no. It's like, no, it's not like SharePoint. Got rid of it. Everything was back right in the world, and the pitchforks and torches were put away for another day. But those are the two different things of federation that do deal with teams, and you have to be mindful and understand what your governance is, what your governances allow, and if your governances do not allow, does it need to go to the governance committee if you have one and actually get a re-up and say, if we want to do this right, we need to do this or this, and go with the game plan.
Do you allow communication with Skype Consumer Edition?
We do not, though that has been a heated heated topic. Our previous HR, senior leadership HR person wanted it. And so the debate raged, and it's still raging now, because one of the things that a lot of people in HR do is interview new people potentially. And most people, when they're interviewing, do not have Skype for Business available to them, and so they only have consumer, and therefore there's no way for those to talk to one another. So it has been debated. Also, research, learning and development. They may have a guest speaker from external. No, for a while there was no way of being able to do that. They were only using the consumer Skype for Skype, and that was an issue. And so there were definite business cases, but after being weighed, we decided, no, we're not going to turn it on for consumer Skype.
All right. Do you plan on doing this all at once or in waves? We already talked about this.
A little bit, yeah. We definitely did that.
So my quick follow-up question to this is, do you have a proof of concept? And if so, how many people?
So before the proof of concept it was even approved, my team and two other teams, desktop engineering and one other team, actually went teams only, just as a dry run. They were all under Brad Schultz, who owns Office 365. Once we were, how should I say, once the parity was close to what Skype for Business was, we then proposed to senior leadership to go ahead and start moving forward to teams only. We met with resistance due to the fact that, as I told you before, there was some very negative connotations around Skype for Business, and they just didn't want another system that was not as good. It was not until our senior leadership team, oddly enough, was back again in Redmond for a different issue. And on one side of the table, all Microsoft senior leadership. On the other side, all Staples leadership. Sadia and his entire team on iPads and devices using Teams to take their notes. And on Staples' side, using Staples paper and pens.
Well, it was branded.
It was branded. But at the same time,
That's cute.
our senior leadership said, wait a minute, what's going on here? And Sadia's senior leadership team actually went down the line and said, this is how I use Teams. Boom, boom, boom. By the time they came back, they were foaming at the mouth saying, I want Teams turned on tomorrow. Hold on. I love the enthusiasm, but due to painful feelings and experiences of its predecessor, let's take this by the numbers.
Yep.
Then we went to SDS, 2,500 individuals. And as I said, because of that, it kind of went, it's definitely growing viral. February 7th, that's in what, like a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm going to actually flip the tenant instead of running a PowerShell script. So we're going from islands only, or islands mode, over to Teams only. Take care of that. Then I'm going to run a PowerShell script to actually have the meetings actually be changed from Skype to Business to Teams. And that one,
That's a beefy script.
oh yeah, it's fun. Fortunately, it's a one line per individual. However, that then kicks off a job per individual. It goes through their calendar and actually turns and burns until
Iterates on
it iterates every
account.
single meeting that is a Skype meeting and changes it to Teams.
How does it deal with, well, whatever. All right. We could talk about that over
Another
drinks
time,
later.
yeah,
but
just long story short,
I want to hear more about this PowerShell script.
2,500 employees. So when we did the SDS, even though the script finished in about 2 hours, the actual meeting the meeting organizer that was actually making the change, that the job ran until 4 or 5 the next morning, so it took 14 hours to run for just 2,500 people, that many meetings.
Yeah.
It-
12,000 or 24,000 total
yeah,
across the
So,
company.
so when I flip the switch,
It's gonna take a little while.
it's gonna take a while, yeah, just saying.
Interesting. That works with reoccurring meetings?
Yes, it works for reoccurring meetings. However, if you have one-offs of that reoccurring meeting, so like,
Oh yeah, those are gone.
like those are gone. It never happened.
That's a known issue with anything, any migration system that ever has to touch a reoccurring meeting. If you modify a reoccurring meeting, all the one-offs are gone. I don't know why they haven't fixed that, but
That would make sense.
it's frustrating.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the big points I wanted to make here, and I would try to make with any client that I'm talking to this about, my company, we at Wellington Street Consulting work on an agile project system. Okay, we are not a waterfall-based projects. We don't do that at all. Kind of hate it. Anybody here not familiar with what I mean when I'm comparing agile to waterfall? Okay. So agile is basically kind of a very quick, fluid methodology that's iterative. So in agile, you'll typically do like what's called a sprint, which is a period of time when you're actually doing work, and then you'll deploy the work from that sprint. Then you gather feedback from that deployment, you review that feedback, incorporate it into the next sprint, do the next sprint, so rinse and repeat. Whereas waterfall is a gather up all of the feedback, you do all of your discovery and research all up front, and then you go into a develop or implement phase where nobody hears from you for 3 months. And then at the end of 3 months, you're lucky if it's only 3 months, you come out with the perfect golden thing that had no feedback whatsoever. And obviously nothing has changed within the company over the course of those 3 months. So, everything's hunky-dory.
Absolutely.
So I've worked for many Fortune 500 companies, and as you can see, I'm a little bitter about the waterfall thing. Proof of concept, getting it out there, getting it out in front of senior management. I mean, for Staples, they got to see it, and they got to see Satya using it. So, I mean, you're not going to top that. But that doesn't happen with most companies. So trying to find a way to kind of get that in front of the people, get the people, at least the stakeholders, get it in front of them, get the demonstration available. Use this facility right here. This is for those of you that don't know, this is a Microsoft training center. Okay, they have rooms here that you can set up and have your companies come in, and Microsoft staff will come in and walk them through scenarios. And it's completely immersive. Everybody gets their own computer, and they'll run them through, like, this is how we use SharePoint. This is how we use hub sites. This is how that ties into Teams. This is how Teams ties into your everything that you do day to day. It's a wonderful experience. I highly recommend looking into it. Those can be facilitated through any Microsoft partners, of which there are many in this room. A bunch of people. There we go. Mark. So yeah, those are really good for just kind of, you want to make it tangible as to what it is that you're working towards. Get it into the hands of the people. Build these. What do you guys call them? Champions?
Champion.
Yeah.
Network.
Build your cheerleaders. Get some people out there and get them jazzed about it. So, and one of my favorite techniques is I'll actually dig in really deep on the one person. Every company always has the naysayer. For a company the size of Staples, it's going to be a few hundred naysayers. But pick the one that's on your stakeholder team or one of the really important, hold the purse strings, whatever. Pick the naysayer. Work really close with them. Convert them to a champion and your biggest cheerleader. And if you can convert them, the rest of the company's going to be like, holy cow, they converted Betsy. If they can get Betsy to use new technology, this must be good. Must be some good stuff. That's my favorite way to go. Pick the one everybody says like you'll never get them to use it. You're like, all right, challenge accepted.
We've definitely got a few of them.
Sure.
Some in interesting places. We, just like any other company, you have, especially a company of our size, you have people all over the bell curve. We were lucky enough to have a lot of early adopters, and then the regular adopters followed in suit very quickly. Again, it hasn't even been officially released company wide. We're looking at about 16 to 17,000 already using it. That being said, it only takes one or two to become the millstone that can actually cause troubles. We do have, oddly enough, an administrative assistant who refused to create a team meeting. Even though the team button and the Skype button was right next to each other, she would never, ever, ever touch the team button. Don't know why, but it definitely caused issues where we actually had to go, hey, look, here's our report. These were Skype meetings. They were not created as team meetings. It's all over the map. And like Mike said, if you can get the hardest naysayer to actually switch over, your job is going to be that much easier.
Yeah, get people within the company, especially if you're one of the, if you're an outsider like I am, you got to get people inside the company to be on your side and then fuel them to get other naysayers, so promote adoption in that fashion. Piggyback off the people that are trying to help you, So I have a few hundred other questions, but we are running a little short on time. And I'd like to give these folks
some time
an opportunity
Absolutely.
to ask us some questions. So what do you guys think? Do you guys have any questions about either the Staples experience and what Staples is going through, or about, how to question or how to deal any particular challenges that you guys are seeing in projects that you're trying to run, and how to overcome those? Yeah.
One question, you said on Staples, you've already had this organic sort of adoption going on right now with teams. What do you do with people who've set up their own teams and everything? I mean, is there some governance and standards over what type of teams, and how do you manage that?
Great question. That's actually one of the questions that we
Firing squad.
So the way that Staples handles it is everyone is allowed to create a team. We have that open-ended, but the way to afford that is we've also turned on in Azure Active Directory the governances that come with as well. We have team deprecation, meaning every 90 days the email goes out to each of the team owners. Are you still using this team, yes or no? They can click the button, yes, they're renewed for 90 days. They skip over it, they get nagged for I think we have it set for 30 days. They don't do it for 30 days, it disappears off the face of the planet for them. And then they have to have it renewed if necessary. We have other things in place, other governance in place as well. We have it attached to the compliance, security and compliance, where we have DLP turned on. We have it looking for credit cards in like 12 different ways, social security cards, driver's licenses, passports, any
PII information, we have it so that it will lock down, block it, and give them the old finger waggle. There are certain things that we have put in place in order to ensure that that's the case. That it doesn't just completely spiral out of control. Without us turning the deprecation of sites on, we're already at something like 2,500 teams that hasn't officially been released yet.
That's us. It would become unmanageable if you don't have any controls over it.
Exactly, but we also have a lot of flows. Staples promotional products, SPP. They actually had a developer come up with an idea that spins a team up for each new client that they're working on as a project, and they fill out this information. A flow kicks off, builds the whole thing out for them, and then they're up and running. Because of things like that, we know there's going to be a lot of growth. But at the same time, when we first turned it on, I watched our number of teams almost half go to 50% of what we had before it was turned on. And what ends up happening is people start to self-police. Plus the Champions Network that we are putting in place. One of the things that we taught them, before you go create a new team, do a search. You might be surprised. It might already be out there. A lot of verbal training. We have a lot of things coming from the desk of our CTO, from Pragati Mathur. She's phenomenal. She's like, yes, I like this idea. So she, from the desk of Pragati, every once in a while an email goes out with, did you know our best practices or tips and tricks? And because it's coming from senior leadership down, there's usually a little bit more eyes on it, and it becomes a little bit more focal. Great question. Other questions?
Yeah, I run one of the first parts of the discovery phases that I do for my clients is a SharePoint inventory list. And it's amazing if once you just run that list and then show it to the clients, and they're like, wait, what's all that? You know, and then just sort it by names. Be like, oh, you have 5 sites named safety. True story.
You like to be very safe.
Do you allow external users to participate?
We do. However, that being said, it's limited. Because we have open federation, from an instant message, peer-to-peer, and video conference call, they can go crazy with anyone out there that has Skype for Business or Teams. That being said, when it comes to document sharing, it's a different animal. We have an SRF, and we use a service called ServiceNow, a ticketing system. But also, I know it's not. Yeah, strengths and weaknesses, right? They actually have to fill a security SRF to actually have a PIM run on a domain before it's even allowed into. Oh Lord, you would have to ask me what a PIM is.
You don't have to tell me what the acronym is, just what is it?
Okay, so long story short, our security team will go through. Has this domain been hacked? Has it been
So it's a
flagged?
security check of some sort.
It's a massive security check on multiple levels. And once that PIM is run and they get the green, it's a low risk, it's a medium risk, it's a high risk, whatever the case is. High risk, we're not going to do. Like, for example, someone tried to do yahoo.com. Yeah, no, not happening. Outlook.com, not happening. Google, gmail.com, not happening. Why? Because anyone on the planet, unvetted, can create an account, and that could be a problem. And so there's certain, the whole reason why we have the whitelisting, why we have this process in place is we want legitimate, and we do not do clients, at least not right now, for multiple reasons. One, we don't have a team large enough to handle the number of clients that we do currently have. But beyond that is the fact that there are other things at stake. So we do vendors and we do partners. We do not do clients. And that is a governance that has been set in place, and for good reason. Because we don't want to have, we have a John Smith from, I'll use Coca-Cola as a client, and a John Smith from Ernest Young Financials, whatever, that we work with. And somebody from the finance department is all gung-ho, but they email both those individuals, and they start typing away, the auto teletype kicks in. Guess what? Because both of John Smith have logged in at one time or another, there's a guest account for both of them, and they could accidentally put the client into the financials. Not awesome. And so because of that, is one of the real solid business cases as to why we do not allow clients into our tenant, even as a guest.
But how do you clean up the guest account?
So there's multiple, I gotta be careful how I say this. There are definitely ways of handling that. You can actually put time bombs on your guest accounts so that they log in. They're good for 90 days, 120 days, whatever you deem is not necessary, and then automatically it's removed from Azure Active Directory. Because when you do invite someone from a different domain, the first thing that happens the first time they log in, it creates an Azure Active Directory guest account in your Azure Active Directory. And it's there to stay unless you have something in place otherwise.
If you do the time bomb thing, can they just log in again and we'll just recreate a guest account for them, or do you have to do something?
Doesn't recreate it, renews the existing account.
Renews.
Somebody has to reshare.
But after it's been deleted, though, it has to create a new one.
Oh, if it were deleted, then yes.
Deleted.
Yes.
So there's it's deleted or made inactive. This one I'm still doing the research, and to be completely honest with you, but that is because we have 10,000 guests for an Azure Active Directory.
Don't know.
I think it's 10,000.
That's it.
Yeah. That I could be off base, but the last time I checked, it was 10,000.
Don't worry, Bill's checking for us.
Yeah, please check for me, Bill. But I could have sworn that. But there is, okay, let me say it, there's X amount that you're allowed in an Azure Active Directory, and then you're full.
Right, but if you clean it
Yes.
out, and then they're on a team, that person, the owner, then have to re-add them to the team?
That's another thing that unfortunately, yeah. So that's the reason why I have not pursued it heavily, because of the fact that the guests that we have, especially our partners, Microsoft, we have a lot of people at Microsoft in our tenants guests from all different areas of our business, and because of it, there's certain things that don't make sense. You have to, again, checks and balances. You've got to be careful when you pull a trigger on a governance and understand the ramifications behind that governance. And that's what I'm currently studying right now. Is if I do pull this trigger, what do I do? Great question.
Any other questions?
Anyone?
Oh,
Go for it.
just on your list, like compliance, like
Yeah.
Place I worked previously was like real keen on if you
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
would have
yeah.
gotten into compliance and
Yeah.
regulatory. That's one of the things that's on my regular list of
Yeah.
whether any industry compliance, any compliance standards that you guys need to abide by, and then figure out the scope of those compliances. Is it limited to one department? Is it the whole company? Is it maybe just like one geographical area? Things of that nature.
Yeah, just make it work well. You're not tempted,
Yeah.
the end users aren't tempted to go hop on the other person's WebEx and,
Right.
the vendor or whoever is controlling, the meeting and not being recorded in, your company.
Right. So one of the really good things about teams is because each time you create a team, it's creating its own site collection, that being a top-level organizational unit in the tenant, you can specify compliances just to that particular team. So you can have specific teams that are completely locked down in other ways from other systems. I said that oddly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And
We have an actual case of where we have to use that.
yeah, sure.
So, something like 7 or 8 months ago, Staples, through Sycamore, purchased a company named Ascendant. However, that being said, there are certain things in order for that purchase to go through, and the government basically said, we're going to put a person here. All sales data from either side never crosses this line, or else you guys are in huge trouble. It's basically it's firewalled information. But at the same time, our senior leadership and certain groups need to share that information across from Staples to Ascendant. We are actually using Azure Information Protection on a single SharePoint site collection that's got that tied down so tightly. Not only do you have to be part of the SharePoint security schema, but you also have to be added in an Azure security group that even turns on the Azure Information Protection, saying this person can even see this stuff. Even if they're added to the SharePoint site and it's in a document library labeled firewall protected, it scrambles it, totally scrambles it. And so that anyone who is not supposed to be there, even if they somehow manage to get in, if they're not part of both security scenarios, it is useless. It is rendered garbage.
But that's the great thing about the granularity of those. You know, we can have super secure areas for just like a handful of files that are only touched by a handful of people. Whereas there are lots of companies that are like, oh, no, we need PCI DS3 compliance, you know, and we have some information that falls under that, so we're setting the boundaries for that compliance at the edge of our network. Oh my God, no, please don't do that. You know, true story. I was hired for a company to manage a merger and acquisition. Large company had acquired four different new companies over the past 2 years. So 5 separate organizations. They were all technically owned by one company now,
Yep.
But they couldn't see anybody's information. When they were emailing each other, it was the same as emailing externally. And I was basically brought in to help kind of unify all of that. They wanted the ability to book rooms that existed in other companies. They wanted to be able to see free busy data on other companies, things of that nature. They just wanted to be able to see the Active Directory lists for all these other companies. But all of these were banks or transaction handling entities. So they all had PCI DS3 standards. And each one implemented their standards differently. And one of them decided, screw it, it's too hard, so we just treat our whole network as though it's like that. And unfortunately, that whole network meant their Exchange servers were included in that. So all of their email was in there. It was a challenge, but it was fun, and we got it done. So lots of really out-of-the-box thinking had to happen for that one.
Is there any concern with the private team discovery that people can see names of teams and know something that's going on that they shouldn't?
Yeah, so your IT department is always going to be able to see names of teams.
No, but they now, private teams are now discoverable by people that should turn it off as a policy.
Right. Well, not just a policy. When you create a private team, you have the option to say, is this discoverable or not? So again, that's a lot of training as well.
But let's be real clear what is meant by that level of discoverable.
Yeah.
Okay? When they say discoverable, they mean going into the Teams interface and doing a search for new teams that I might want to join.
I realize that, but
they-
name teams sometimes a little too concisely, so,
Yeah,
you know, bankruptcy plan is.
right, yeah, layoff plans, yeah. Yeah, no, I've heard people bring up this point before, yeah. And one of my key things is, come up with code names first off. So let's do some training around some of that stuff. Let's do code names, things like that. Let's not create a team called, September layoffs. Because guess what? That's going to be the first team that's breached in your company. I guarantee you that. But my point is that little discoverable checkbox, that means nothing to anyone in your IT department. So your entire IT department or anybody who has access to the Teams or SharePoint admin consoles or Azure admin consoles, they will be able to view that. They will at least be able to view that it exists.
Is that any admin access or only if you're like global admin or Teams admin?
Global admin, Teams admin, SharePoint admin, Azure
Right,
From
if you're,
PowerShell.
admin, or audit role.
But if you have PowerShell access, you can't see it. It's a private.
So PowerShell access is kind of it doesn't really matter because for the most part, your PowerShell access is going to be a piggyback off of your role. So technically, everyone in your company has PowerShell access. Everyone has PowerShell access. It's just a question of what they can read, and what they can read is determined by the role that is assigned to them.
It's also permission granted as well. It still falls in permission.
Yeah.
David, I had a question. Just in terms of the leadership, they're bought in, they're enthusiastic. What's driving that? Are there broader themes, broader, strategy push that's aligned to adoption of modern workplace? And what's next?
Great question. So,
Just like the $5 million in savings on the conference.
It's usually-
well,
it's usually one of the early
that's
ones, yeah.
the business. As far as the adoption or the all of a sudden change of attitude towards teams, I think the biggest thing is actually being there in Redmond and watching the Microsoft senior leadership team and how they work. And when each of the HR, this is how HR uses it, IT, et cetera. They went through it, and Saudi even started it and showed how he used it and why he used it. That helped them visualize the possible. Because let's face it, senior leaderships, they're there to try to keep the business running and to make sure that it's being profitable. Being creative as far as the technology and changing the way they do things when certain things work and have worked, probably not going to be as high of a priority.
Yeah.
So
You need to build a strong case for why we need to change. This is how much better it is going to be.
So that being said, one of the biggest pushes right now at Staples is the digital workplace. That is the buzzwords of the day at Staples, where the whole concept, one of the things that Staples has done was a survey for all the employees. And one of the things that people like to do is work from home. And the whole concept of not needing VPN to work in Office 365 and after this Teams Skype to Teams migration completes, we're turning our attention to our file service and actually turning it to SharePoint Online using Azure data boxes and things like that.
Yeah.
That all of that is starting to come into place because of the fact that Staples is looking forward and becoming more mobile, and that is definitely the insight and the vision that our CTO has seen and wants to take the company because of the fact we are now 3 different companies under the name of Staples. So Staples Canada, retail, and our the prime was it. They keep changing it. They do. When I said alphabet soup and let's find a new acronym, it happens. So, but anyways, the long and the short of it is, as we continue to morph and change and become retail for the next decade and century, because let's face it, it's changing. Everything's changing. People's ideas and buying patterns have changed drastically with online purchases. When I first got hired onto Staples, I learned something in orientation I never even knew. Outside of Amazon, we were the second highest website for office product, like in the world. It was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. So there's a lot of things that are out there, and that are forcing, I would say forcing, coaxing senior leadership teams to retake a look at it. Let's face it, the rental of space is extremely expensive. If you actually looked up how much per foot, a square foot that your place is, and then actually put that, okay, our cubes are small, it's only 24 square foot, which is really tiny.
Right.
But then you multiply that by the $35 or $75 per square foot that they're paying. So one employee, all this, there's a lot of things that are going on where the digital workplace makes a lot more sense for a company.
It's really great. Yeah.
That's one of the, again, return on investment. If you can say we don't need to rent as much space to the point where we can shrink it, then you multiply that by the $35 or $75 per square foot. All this, there's a lot of things that are going on. It's on the side panel. That makes a lot more sense for companies. That's one of the, again, return on investment. If you just have that. Wow. I'm excitable. Anyway, let's see. It's fine right there. I don't care who you are. But the fact that that puck is actually picking me up.
Ready for the next phase, but whatever.
Whatever. So, but yeah. The whole concept of business is definitely evolving and changing. The world is a much smaller place with the internet. And with all the studies that are going on, people working from the home because they don't have to travel, they tend to work a little bit longer because they don't have the commute. And so a lot more gets done anyways. And if you have certain governances in place, and I use that term very loosely, so that if you are working from home, you turn your video camera on, so I can see that you're not sitting on the beach drinking Pilates.
Yeah, right.
That's great. Boards, great question. Other questions, concerns?
So on your Teams, you have dial-in numbers though, you could dial into Teams chat.
So to Teams meeting, yes. So that's a conference bridge. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a whole another ball of wax.
Alright, so you don't have a PBX, but you have that. You still have numbers.
Yeah, we still have numbers. In fact, one of the great things about live events is that there's a conference number that goes with the live event, so we can actually have people call into those broadcasts. Where Skype for Business broadcast, that was not an option. They had to join with the device.
Is that one of your numbers or the Microsoft?
It's a Microsoft.
You can select a number out of, you can request another one. So we created one specific for Boston. That was ours, but yeah.
But there are, so that those numbers are regional based.
Yeah,
and you can actually select in your tenant to have one of them be default,
Yep.
or you can choose a couple of them. I think you can now do default regional,
Yep.
which is
And we have to because we have a lot of people in
right.
Canada.
Well, anybody global, yeah. But yeah, if you notice, and that's why you want it to just be a Microsoft number, because they have numbers all over the place so that they're all local. But yeah, so the conference bridge dial-up, actually, you can get that with no integration into your phone system because it never touches your phone system. It is a completely separate product and has nothing to do with anything that you are running on-prem for your funds, which is kind of awesome.
Or additional costs for that.
What's that?
Additional costs.
Yeah, it's an extra license.
$4 per user per month as an add-on or included with E5 or M5.
Is it by continuous number of users on the whole tenant?
Actually, it's 32.
What's that?
Is it by the users on the entire tenant, or is it by use?
No. So the only people that need it are the people who are creating the meeting. Okay? So the people attending the meeting, they don't need that license. Okay? So think of it this way, like if you have a bunch of project managers that are running a ton of different projects, you only want to give this license to the project managers. Because the project managers are generally the ones that are sending out all the meetings and doing all the logistics for their teams. Everybody else can run the team, can run the meetings, they just won't have the dial-up information. Their only option will be joined by the app.
All the project managers can set up a continuous meeting, people joining.
Yep.
They're not there.
Yep. Yes. All right. Any other questions? Awesome. So if you guys have any other questions, we are going to be doing drinks afterwards. So we're going to go over to Chops, which is over at the Boston Marriott, and we'll have a slide for that on the last piece. So we're going to move into upcoming community events. Yep, I know. I'm catching on to how this works. So one of the things we do is, we pride ourselves on giving back to the community, and we want to let you guys know that there's lots of other things out there. And one of the big ones that's coming up, oh my God, that's a lot of delay.
20 to 40 seconds.
It's been more than 20 to 40 seconds.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Jesus. Okay. All right. So in the future, we won't be doing it quite this way. So the very first annual Teams Thursday New England is coming up. I believe this is the first event of its kind globally. It's definitely the first one in New England, but I believe it's the first one globally. And what this is basically modeled just like the SharePoint Saturdays. So it's going to be very similar to a SharePoint Saturday event, except changed in scope to Teams and on a Thursday, for those that couldn't follow that. And for those that are familiar with it, you may even notice it's the exact same damn freaking logo, but he changed the colors. So it went from orange to purple. But we love Mark, even though he couldn't stay the whole meeting. Anyways,
Wow.
I can be catty. Catty. So anyways, we're really looking forward to it. We think it's going to be a great event. Both David and I are going to be speaking there, we think. We both submitted a lot of stuff, so we'll likely be there.
Joel also will be there.
Chris Bortlick is doing a
Chris
keynote.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, there's gonna be lots of really good presentations. It'll be a really good way to get all the inside scoop on not just what Teams is currently, but what it will be in the future. And that will actually be in this location on April 7th. Whatever it says.
Thursday.
Yeah, on a Thursday. Go for it. Oh, right there, April 2nd. Steve told you.
Brilliant.
Other than that, we also have Microsoft Ignite. I've heard of that. It's going to be in New Orleans. New Orleans? I didn't know that. So Microsoft Ignite Conference 2020 will be in New Orleans, running from September 21st to September 25th. For those of you that are interested in going to that, you're going to want to get your tickets soon, or more importantly than getting your tickets, book your hotel rooms now. This event always cleans out whatever the heck city it is in and the hotel rooms run out. So be aware of that and get those quickly. And we may or may not have the opportunity to have some raffle item tickets in the future for this event. So, keep an eye out for that. There's also the Women IT Pros monthly call, but we have no idea when, apparently. So that's a thing that happens at some point. And you can check out aka.ms/Women IT Pros to find out more. Are we missing anything? Anybody know of any other events where people are sharing cool, nerdy information?
Wow.
So we can nerd out some more? No?
I
Any role-playing games looking for new members?
I find a lot of stuff like meetup.com, Big Tech, and
Yeah.
browse through it. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This.
What are your favorites?
I've been job searching, so just kind of shotgun.
Okay.
Looking at a bunch of different.
Sure.
Just bunch of different stuff and networking and stuff like that. Letting jobs will dial back a bit, but it's a lot of people at AWS, Python.
Yeah. David's thing isn't on here. I don't know when that is.
Well, it must be the third
Fourth
Tuesday. Third
Yep.
Tuesday.
Third Tuesday? Yeah. Third or fourth
Because
Tuesday
we're
is the
second, we're
DXP platform something.
Yeah.
That's what David Losey is going to be running. So
I think I've been to like Java
Not sure.
event.
There's
Yeah.
also Wednesday, February 5th, here Microsoft is having a 365 training day, Journey to Microsoft Teams, sort of in
on
alignment
what
with-
day?
On Wednesday, February 5th.
February 5th.
Okay.
Interesting. Isn't that when they're doing the Azure fundamentals as well?
Have you?
I posted it on your team's chat
Yeah?
that I'm going to,
Office operator?
Okay.
on the education channel.
All right, that's good to know. There's also a Azure
Yeah.
Azure Fundamentals Day.
Which is,
Um,
though I think a
and,
week or two later.
If anybody's going to that, you'll see me there. I'm signed up for that one. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've been to a bunch of Azure ones that
Yeah.
are well attended and good information.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Azure one is an all-day event. Is the Teams thing all day?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. You should look into who's running that. And I'm not sure why this slide is here. Okay, apparently we put them out of order because we're asking for anything more. Now we're showing you things that are more. So anyways, Hartford has an Office 365 user group. Granite State is still sticking to just SharePoint only. They're
Yeah.
not going to do Office 365.
Multiple times a Jen about that. An effort to refuse. Brave.
And then we also have the Boston Azure, the Power BI user group, the Skype for Business user group.
Which will actually be around for a while because Skype for Business on-prem ain't going nowhere. As you can imagine,
Yeah.
having Teams on-prem is probably not going to happen.
And then there's also the Boston PowerShell user group. So these are all excellent user groups. I've been to 3 of the 4 of them. And actually, I've been to all of those other SharePoint ones. Actually, I haven't been to the Harvard one. That's Jared Mathis, right?
Yeah, I've actually spoken there. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So coming up, we're doing stuff. From process map to action, designing in Visio and then executing in Power Automate. that's going to be the topic for next month. That's going to be presented by Scott Helmers. He's our resident Visio expert. This guy, I think, has literally written a book on Visio.
Literally,
I
yeah.
think so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, if you set a Visio Enterprise Edition in a certain mode, it can actually be directly imported into Flow. And you can do all kinds of wonderful goodness.
Or Visio 2013 into SharePoint Designer.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I remember that. I actually printed
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. She's
So-
chopping at the bit.
Yep. So that's it. That's our last stuff.